We all remember him. Different show, different catchphrases, same guy. Joey Tribbiani working a sandwich like it owed him money. Jazz getting launched out of the bank's front door again, and again, and again. Steve Urkel detonating a Winslow family dinner on Family Matters and leaving with a soft, "Did I do that?" And Screech Powers, mid-humiliation, in front of the entire Bayside gang. We grew up thinking these were the funny ones. ABC's TGIF had one, so did NBC's Thursday night lineup. Nickelodeon's Snick had a whole hallway. Comic relief between the real storylines. Stack them up and something clicks. These weren't accidents of casting. Every one of those shows, different networks, different writers, all reached for the same character. A guy who could screw up anything he touched and still be loved at the end of the episode. He broke the plan, he said the wrong thing at the wrong dinner, and nobody ever actually got mad. Not in a way that's stuck. That's a pattern, and the decade was built around it. The 90s needed a character who could create chaos without creating danger. Someone who could fail in public and keep the room warm. We didn't notice it then, but every show was running the same guy. And that guy is every 90s sitcom secret ingredient. Think about your living room when you were a kid. The carpet, the couch we weren't supposed to eat on, the glow of a tube TV at 4:30 on a weekday. Or maybe it's Snick on a Saturday night. Maybe it's TGIF. Maybe it's syndication humming while we pretended to do homework. But then we'd hear it, the door slam, the studio audience leaning forward before the joke even landed, a character bursting into the scene mid-disaster, already committed to a plan that was never going to work. The laughter kicks in before he opens his mouth. We knew that rhythm by heart. We knew exactly what kind of guy was about to walk in. And some part of us was already smiling. The 90s sitcom played to rooms full of parents and little brothers and grandmothers watching the same screen. It couldn't go dark. It couldn't punch too hard. Damage had to reset by the credits. The Lovable screw-up was the solution. A guy who could be wrong without being bad. A guy whose worst day turned into a group laugh instead of a group exile. He let a sitcom generate friction without doing real emotional damage to anyone inside it. Let's name the traits. He's overconfident in a way his track record does not justify. He's emotionally obvious. His stupidity is the trusting kind, like a big dog who thinks every stranger is a friend. He doesn't learn, learning would end him. The sitcom needs him back in the same room next week with the same grin and the same bad idea. He stands next to somebody way more put together, and his job is simply to keep the show from turning into a drama. Jazz keeps the bank's house from sealing itself off from everything Will came from. Screech keeps Bayside from turning into a hallway of schemers. Eric gives Boy Meets World permission to go weird. Urkel is the reason the Winslow house on Family Matters never stops feeling like a home with a storm inside it. Joey on Friends softens the neurotic edge of everyone around him. From there, he sorts into 3 clean archetypes, ones we see with 3 different distinctions. First, we've got what I call the charming screw-up. Joey is the platonic form. His confidence never cracks when the mistakes lands, so the group never has to manage his embarrassment for him. He thinks one syllable of Italian makes him fluent, and he means it. No malice in the engine. Barely an engine, really. Charming incompetence never notices it has anything to apologize for. Then we have what I call the chaotic screw-up. Jazz, Urkel, Eric Matthews, even Kimmy Gibbler on Full House. All of them warp the register of whatever scene they walk into. They refuse to match the tone the other characters are operating in, and that refusal is the joke. Jazz walks into a mansion and lowers the ceilings. Urkel walks into a Winslow living room and turns it into a disaster site, and the family keeps him anyway. Kimmy walks through the Tanner's kitchen like she was invited, and the Tanner's polite horror is the whole joke. Eric is the stranger version of this. He breaks the room because he's actually falling apart, and the show is brave enough to let that flicker through before pulling the laugh. Same mechanism, different volumes. And that adult time slot version of this exact cluster is Kramer on Seinfeld. Same engine running at 35 on NBC's Thursday night lineup, absorbed weekly by a friend group that treated him like weather. And finally, there's the awkward screw-up. Screech. This is the most painful one and the most necessary one. Screech fails by overcommitting to normal interactions until they collapse under him. He tries to talk to a girl and it becomes a crisis. He tries to sing and it becomes a cautionary tale. Joey stays confident. Eric comes apart. Screech is just us at our worst, caught trying too hard in public while everyone watching. 3 types, same output. All of them took something the audience was scared of, being seen failing, being the one everybody laughed at, and metabolized it on our behalf. Watching Screech botch a conversation did something to a 10-year-old brain. It filed away the information that botching a conversation was not an exile event. The group kept him. The show kept him. He came back next week and nobody brought it up. The Lovable screw-up was a permission slip for every screw-up we hadn't committed yet. A quick lineage note. This archetype didn't arrive fully formed in 1993. Before Urkel, there was Balky on Perfect Strangers, the 80s proto-version of the same engine, a cousin imported from a fictional Mediterranean island into a Chicago apartment he had no social tools to survive in. Family Matters was literally the spin-off. Urkel perfected what Balky started. The scene to hold in our heads is any public Screech meltdown. He volunteers an answer no one asked for. He tries to impress a girl with chemistry demonstration that fogs the room. He attempts a normal conversation in the Bayside hallway and it escalates into a complete social wreck inside 40 seconds. Watch one of them back now. The show isn't punishing him. The humiliation lands and the episode just keeps going. Zach rolls his eyes, Slater moves on, Screech is at the same lunch table in the next episode like nothing happened. Some of those beats, especially the ones with Lisa, don't really age cleanly, and we'll come back to that. But the structural move is the point. The humiliation doesn't expel him from the group. It reseats him in it. Every time Screech wrecks a public moment, the show is quietly telling us that the friend group is stronger than the embarrassment. Every time. It's a small, loud, brightly lit promise that being seen at our worst doesn't end us. Here's the part that we may have not noticed as kids. The Lovable screw-up was a specific kind of fantasy. The sitcom already had characters for power and romance. He was the fantasy of being loved anyway. Think about what the 90s was telling us everywhere else. Be cool, be popular, get the right starter jacket. Don't be the kid who got picked last. Don't be the one whose joke bombed at the lunch table. The social stakes for a millennial kid were enormous and visible and almost entirely about not being embarrassing. Then we'd come home, flip on the TV, and watch a guy be embarrassing for 22 straight minutes and get hugged for it. A version of ourselves were the worst case scenario. Being the dumb one, being the kid who showed up to the party in the wrong outfit, wasn't a disqualifying event. The group still wanted us there. No writer was sitting in a room saying we're gonna inoculate Gen Y against the shame of adolescence. The shows were doing it anyway. Every time Urkel said, "Did I do that?" or Jazz got tossed out of a door, or Screech blew a simple hallway conversation, we were being trained to believe something quietly radical. The lesson was buried in a laugh track, but it was there. And none of this was as prevalent in other decades. That's what makes it specific. The 90s was the last moment when a network was still programming for an entire household at once. One TV, one show, everybody in the same room. The architecture forced a certain kind of character. He had to be legible to a 7-year-old and a 40-year-old in the same frame at the same time. Funny without clearing the room, recognizable in 3 seconds. The Lovable screw-up was the most legit character on television. The production backed him up. Bright, high-key lighting, 3-wall sets with a live studio audience built right into the rhythm of the scene. When a character walked into a set that lit, we already knew the episode wasn't going anywhere dark. Then there's the part we really underestimate. Pre-digital embarrassment. In the 90s, a mistake lived only in the people who saw it. No phones, no clips, no screenshots, no group chat pile-on. Humiliation expired. We would bomb a conversation on Thursday, and by Monday the story was already shrinking inside the people who witnessed it. The Lovable screw-up was built for that world. The screw-up needs a world that forgets. We don't live in one anymore. Back then, the ensemble absorbed our embarrassment. Now the internet stores it. One thing before we move on, the screw-up never stood alone. He was always positioned next to someone, the uptight friend, the scheming best buddy, the parent with mile-high standards. This whole ecosystem is its own pattern, and it's one we're unpacking next in the Millennial Rewind Pattern Lab. The 90s sitcom wasn't a bag of characters. It was a system. But here's what this trope trained us to feel. Belonging doesn't require polish. Joey taught us that charm could offset incompetence. Screech taught us that awkwardness wasn't exile. Eric taught us that falling apart didn't get us left behind. Urkel taught us that a Winslow family dinner could be destroyed weekly and the family would still keep a plate out. That's a beautiful thing to learn. It's also a complicated thing to learn. Because here's how the same behavior reads now. Joey's charm looks unserious. Jazz looks like a burden. Eric looks like a man-child. Screech looks like someone in a modern writer's room with arc towards self-awareness by episode 6. The archetype has been retranslated, correctly in a lot of ways, as weaponized incompetence. The guy whose chaos is a tax other people pay. The 90s version mostly works because the show hides that tax. Watch Friends now and notice how much of Joey's charm depends on Monica being in the building. Watch Saved by the Bell and notice that Screech's persistence only plays as funny because Lisa never gets a full episode to be actually worn down by it. The screw-up was lovable partly because the camera never cut to the person who was tired of him. The format was concealing a cost. The archetype only worked because the culture and the production style together kept certain costs off screen. Once we start seeing what got hidden, we can't unsee it. And yet, every few weeks a Screech clip or a Feeney call or an Urkel did I do that shows up on our feeds and we all stop scrolling. Call it millennial nostalgia if we want. But the real things it's doing is something else entirely. Most takes land on memeable, and memeable is too easy. The sharper read is that these characters were already pre-optimized for the feed, decades before the feed existed. Overconfidence plus total failure is the cleanest comedic engine there is. The internet didn't invent that rhythm, it inherited it. And there's something else underneath the nostalgia. In a timeline full of curated disasters, people performing failure for engagement, turning their embarrassment into a brand, watching Urkel detonate a Winslow living room or Eric spiral over Feeney feels almost therapeutic. Nobody in these clips is farming anything. The fail is just the fail. In today's world, uncurated stupidity reads as sincerity. That's why the clips keep circulating. They're the last version of humiliation we trust. Step back and look at what this archetype was doing in the architecture of a 90s show. He wasn't decoration, he was load-bearing. Joey softens friends. Without him, the show gets sharper and colder and becomes 5 neurotics in a coffee shop. Jazz punctures the polish of Fresh Prince. Without him, the Banks house seals itself from everything Will came from. Eric gives Boy Meets World its emotional volatility. Without him, it's a straight coming-of-age drama with no air in the room. Urkel is Family Matters' entire weather system. Without him, the Winslow house is a quiet family drama no one remembers. Screech is Saved by the Bell's awkward humiliation engine. Without him, Zach's schemes have no contrast and the entire Bayside hallway goes flat. Pull him out and the warmth goes with him. He was the reason the worlds felt forgiving. And we don't make him anymore. Modern TV has replaced him with characters who fail in real, therapeutic ways, and that's the end of a specific cultural belief. The belief that a person could be ridiculous and still be easy to love. The 90s was the last decade confident enough to put a guy on television who had no skills, no plan, no clue, and no shame, and frame him as one of the most loved people in the room. It's strange what stays with us. We forget the plots. We forget most of the jokes. We forget which season of Family Matters Urkel accidentally invented something that could bend space. But we don't forget the feeling. That specific warmth of a show that forgave its worst behaved characters every single week. That's the frequency the 90s broadcasts on. And every character we loved was either the screw-up himself or the person standing next to him. We just covered the screw-up. Next time we go after the person he was standing next to. The one who looked the most put together. who had their hair, the catchphrases, the whole calibrated act, who turned out to be faking harder than any of them. Zach Morris, the fake cool guy. So we'll see you in the next one, and if this video hit something with you, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and until next time, please take care of yourself.